I found that meditation and mindfulness has given me much higher performance in my work due to more effective stress management. And I want to tell you about this psychological law that I learned about. So let's go ahead and let's say we drew a chart with your performance on the y-axis, and then the amount of physiological arousal that you're under, anxiety, stress, panic, on the x-axis. So what relationship do you find between these two in your personal experience? What does stress do to your performance? Give me some examples. So if you were to draw this curve, what it might look like? How would you describe it? In terms of your relationship between physiological arousal, stress, and your performance. Fair enough. Yes, the pictures are helping. But just kind of think back about your week or this experience. What's that curve like?
Being stressed out makes you dumb.
Being stressed out makes you dumb. Yep. Very, very well said. But on the other hand, like if you have a lot of caffeine and you're crunked out, you go to the gym and your performance is really good, right? And so it's that stress is valid in some cases, right? So what I want to posit then is that there are some tasks, right? Labor intensive. They don't require a lot of novel thinking, like digging a ditch, harvesting produce, assembly, right? Well, there's a positive correlation up to a point, right? So going to the gym, you get a bunch of caffeine, you get crunked up, right? This works really, really well. Now, this is true for, even today, the vast majority of human labor, right? Most of us are very lucky to be in an office work job, right, where we're kind of in this nice, creative, casual environment. Most of us in the world are not in these environments that we're here. They're doing much harder work, physically, right? It's mentally simple, but it's physically demanding or just very rote, assembly type things. It doesn't require a lot of thinking. It just requires a lot of repetition or strength. So there's positive correlation up to a point. And as to your point, like stress makes you dumb, right? We get all this physiological arousal and your performance drops. So we've been in stressful situations that rob us of our creativity and productivity. So what's going on, right? There's something wrong with these curves. Well, in 1908, over 110 years ago, two psychologists discovered, Robert Yerkes and John Dodson, observed this empirical relationship between physiological arousal and performance. And it just so happens that it depends what you're working on. So if you've got these simple tasks, the more physiological arousal you have, the better your performance, going to the gym, things like that. But for creative tasks, it's actually this inverse U-shaped curve. So if you're a manager, right, and you see this level of performance, you're likely to think about the blue curve, right? Because that's true of the vast majority of human labor. So if you're a manager and the blue curve is your mental model, what are you going to do? You're going to ratchet up the pressure, right? And what happens? Well, performance drops, right? Because you're thinking of the wrong curve. And so this is something that I tell managers a lot about is, hey, be aware that this curve exists. And if you're seeing this level of performance, it's not that they're here on this blue line. They might actually be here on this green line. You might actually need to get people to relax and calm down and pull off that stress. And so as a manager, we need to stop stressing people out, or at least be very clear that we know where they are in this curve. And as individuals, we need to figure out how we can calm our physiology down so we can improve our own performance. And that's what I think mindfulness does for us. It gives us the opportunity to just calm down our physiological system by giving us a chance to relax and improving our parasympathetic nervous system activity, which is kind of the opposite of the fight, flight, freeze response. It's a chance to just slow and calm down. And it just so happens that the more demanding the task, the sharper this curve gets, right? So if you're under really, really, really difficult, stressful, complex situations, the necessity of finding that right flow spot is actually really, really important, that you don't have a lot of leeway room. So it also so happens that extreme levels of physiological arousal can really hit our amygdala, right? We get triggered and we start getting in conflict with others. It can really harm our productivity, it can really harm our careers. Therefore, I think this gives us an opportunity to really realize two things. I think it's perfectly reasonable that managers are aware of this curve, right? And they use this old curve. That we just need to look out for it and advise them. Second of all, I think that we need an opportunity to find our sweet spot of physiological arousal, right? There's this kind of this peak flow state. And you've all been in it, right? If you've ever experienced flow, you've experienced this sweet spot. You're totally alert, but also totally relaxed. And that's what I hope that mindfulness can show you, as it's shown for me, is this ability to understand and measure my physiological arousal so I can stay there. And it just so happens that skilled meditators have known this for a very long time, that they walk this very thin line between this dullness that saps their mental energy, that kind of gets you falling asleep, and this agitation that makes you feel like you want to get up off the cushion, right? You're like constantly thinking. And so a lot of meditation is just learning how to regulate your physiological system, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and kind of in that vagal nerve response to find the right level of balance between falling asleep and getting off the cushion. So for those doing the work, meditation is a powerful means of reducing stress once it's arisen, right? And I think this is one of the reasons why we see meditation becoming so popular in corporate environments. But I think it also can help us take us much further, right? Practice is going to give us the ability to actually eliminate or reduce the condition that gives rise to this physiological arousal in the first place. Has anyone done a retreat, like a meditation retreat? Joe, you've done a retreat. Cindy, you've done a retreat. Cindy, what retreat did you do?
Well, I did more of that Hawaiian spirituality
Cool.
retreat, so that was more of that spiritual.
Totally, and it's totally valid. And Joe, have you done a retreat as well?
I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat.
Cool, you did a 10-day long time ago.
Yeah, that went good.
Nice, yeah, absolutely. And I think Cindy and Joe, probably both of you found that in your retreats, you kind of encountered stuff that was really difficult to process at the time. You kind of got through it by doing the hard work. And coming on the other side of it, you were just different.
Yeah.
Is it a fair statement?
Yeah, very fair.
That it was a difficult, challenging experience, but stuff didn't quite needle you the same way that it used to. And so what I'm positing is that not only can we reduce the stress once it arises, but if we actually have a really diligent practice that lets us get at some of this stuff, it's going to prevent those triggers and those stress from arising in the first place. So any questions about this Yerkes-Dodson Law and kind of the balance of physiological arousal and performance? Yeah.
The lines that are drawn are a little cartoonish, right?
Yeah.
But, I'm sort of have some questions on whether even the blue line leveling off is accurate, because I know that I've seen people don't really do these studies anymore, but there was really old shell manufacturing studies from World War I where they showed that as working hours and stress go up, like you get negative productivity, even in fairly simple manufacturing tasks.
That may well be the case. And part of this is kind of a general theory, and I think you're right, though. And it may just be that it doesn't quite level off. It may start to drop off, but like at a much lower point, and that the wiggle room that you have for arousal is maybe wider for those sorts of tasks, right? That it's kind of the opposite of the more complex tasks, right? I mentioned earlier, hey, depending on the complexity of the task, that width could change. So yeah, I could absolutely see that even in shell manufacturing, things like that in World War II, yes, I could absolutely see that even high levels of stress would impact performance there, absolutely.
Do you have, I haven't really looked through this this time, are there resources to dive deeper into sort of that?
Yeah, it's called the Yerkes-Dodson Law, and in the footnotes of the handout, you'll find a Wikipedia link. Yeah. It's been around for a while. Like you see it in a lot of physiology textbooks. It's a pretty common theorem.